Hello everyone, and thanks once again for joining us here for this Friday's edition of Alaska Statewide Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy. Up first here on the hazardous weather graphic, we've got a what was a wind chill advisory that ended at noon today for the eastern Alaska range here. That's going to become or it is currently right now, a wind advisory that'll last through tonight, at least through tonight and into tomorrow here for the eastern Alaska range, mostly around the Delta Junction area for east winds gusting to 60 miles per hour. And then back to the northwest there, wind advisories continue. But first, also have a winter storm warning continuing here for the Juneau Borough, Haynesboro, on up to the along the Klondike Highway to White Pass through tonight until 5 a.m. tomorrow morning for 4 to 9 inches of snow to fall in these areas. Currently, we have rain along the outer coastline at Sitka down to Port Alexander, Elfin Cove, but snowfall amounts here toward the eastern interior there, or toward the eastern border, specifically Stewart, Hyder, those areas. So winter weather advisories continue there for lesser snow amounts through tonight. And back up here, we have the wind advisories continuing through tonight and actually through tomorrow as well, and I believe into Monday for winds gusting to 40 miles an hour here for the areas of the Kobuk Valley, which includes the greater Ambler area, and the Koyukuk Valley with Bettles in that zone, and down to Galena there, and not quite getting, well, it'll be to the northwest of McGrath and Nikolai. And again, that's out into Monday. Otherwise, satellite imagery today, we've got one band of moisture, surge of moisture coming northward here. Brought some precipitation in across the southwest interior, light amounts up along the North Gulf Coast areas, and then back off to the east there. And the next front moving in a little more rapidly toward the southeast coast there at the back edge, west of the Queen Charlotte's here in the main center, south of Kodiak Island, just beginning to affect the island there this afternoon with an increase in the clouds and breezy conditions as well. Out to the west, we've got mostly a lighter easterly that becomes northerly flow with showers, all in the form of rain along the Aleutians today from Shimia all the way into the Fox Islands. Also some rather large breaks there occurring here west of, from Nikolsky on out toward Atka, and then from Adak over to about Amchitka Island. So not all that bad out there, a little more concentrated in the showers with the clouds over toward Shimia, but really not too bad even for the eastern Aleutians here. Some clearing over the southwest interior behind this first surge that's lifting northward and actually shearing apart with part of it sliding off to the northeast there. And then the colder air is evident here by the more gray type clouds as the Arctic air spilling out over the open water there from the Russian Far East. They'll eventually drop those snowfall levels down along the Aleutians to near sea level. And we've got just some high stuff spreading into the central interior with that feature. Really pretty weak here. The first round coming northward. This one will be a little bit stronger, and then the one coming up tomorrow will be quite a bit stronger. On the chart for today, here's that first band weakening, areas of light snow from the southwest coast, Nunivak Island, westward here across southern Alaska, trending toward rain along the outer coastline. That same pattern, as I mentioned, into the southeast coast with snow, moderate amounts here falling over the northern Panhandle, Juneau on up to Haines, and then toward White Pass with mostly a form of rain again down along the south coast here. And then a break between that one and this next system, 955 millibar low there, and the showers out here over the Aleutians, and that's about it. There's a tightening pressure gradient here, or still a tight pressure gradient across southern central Alaska, and those winds gusting 40 to, in some cases, high as 45 miles an hour in the higher elevations here, continuing through today, will continue through tonight, and probably through tomorrow as well. Now, putting this, looking at the forecast for tonight, that 959 millibar low moves to about this position here, and the front right up to just near Sitkinak, so gale force winds or storm warnings actually kick in here for Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, the Barrens, Kachemak Bay, and eventually into the North Gulf Coast. That probably won't be tonight, probably carrying the gales tonight, but those will become storms tomorrow as another developing system down here to the south moves northward there and really puts a squeeze on the atmosphere, and the winds kick up pretty good. Otherwise, that weakening front right in across the Panhandle, there's temperatures continuing to warm And so you're looking at more areas of rain, especially along the coast and to the south. They'll be gradually working northward. Late tonight, by tomorrow morning, could start mixing, maybe a little fast here, getting that all the way up to getting the mixed precipitation zone all the way up to Skagway, but it's possible. And again, dry over the interior and breezy with the less wind as you go north to the Arctic coast, across the Brooks Range area. And then we pick up some isolated snow showers here through the Bering Strait and St. Lawrence Island, a more widespread area with this trough out through here. So it looks like rain showers early this evening. It'll change over to snow by tomorrow morning for the Pribilofs. And that's a possibility as that cold air slides southward here. Late tonight, that could be in the form of snow all the way, including all of the Aleutians. And then for tomorrow, that same trend continues, really scattering out though, just isolated showers at the most there with light northerly winds for the western Aleutians, and scattered snow showers that would be about the way to sum it up here for the central and eastern Aleutians. Still kind of a mixed condition right through here. A little bit more wind as well, northwesterlies kicking up a little bit more on the west side of this 950 millibar low that today is tracking a little bit farther westward than it was yesterday, now up to near Sand Point by tomorrow afternoon. But as this front lifts northward here, you can see a very tight gradient actually across southern Alaska all the way into the Panhandle, carrying those storm force winds for tomorrow there from the North Gulf Coast here in across Kodiak Island and those areas, Kachemak Bay, definitely the Barrens, and pretty good wind here for Cook Inlet as well as Prince William Sound. Rain possibly heavy, good south to north flow, a lot of moisture and warm air coming northward there. So definitely, again, early on, maybe some snow over the northern southeast coast, but temperatures rising up to well into the 40s here, down to the south now along the coastline. And then we got another surge weakening as it pulls inland there. Probably will get north of the Alaska Range, but only areas of light snow or flurries. Winds gusting 60, 65 miles an hour, Delta Junction for that wind advisory there, and very tight gradient, pretty turbulent flying weather tomorrow here across southern Alaska. And then for Sunday, things improve. That low center pulls northward along the coast to just about over Macoriac at 965 millibars. To the north and west, colder temperatures. That'll be the snow area. Mixed rain and snow to just plain rain here, especially down toward the Alaska Peninsula will actually become more showery. Showers Kodiak Island with less wind, and this weakening front will still good southerly flow here. Temperature highs reaching near 50 degrees, especially where some clearing may occur there over the southern southeast coast. But it looks like a good solid rain situation for the day on Sunday for the northern Panhandle. And definitely the cold snap is over for at least the time being in that area, as well as much in the interior as well, with you can see warm air surging all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast there. It should stay in the form of snow up in this area, but could see some mixed conditions along the border. Really not a lot of precipitation along this portion of the front here. Pretty dry. It all gets choked off by the Alaska Range, but from there southward it'll be the heavier precipitation. Lots of showers out to the west. Low temperatures for Saturday morning looking like this, still in the mid-minus 20s here over the northeast interior, below zero north slope in the Arctic coast, lower teens Yukon Delta, and really mild conditions now, upper 30s here spreading into the Bristol Bay area, or I'm sorry, the Kodiak Island area, upper 20s through south central Alaska, and in the 20s for the Panhandle to upper 30s there along the south coast. And highs tomorrow pushing up to near 50 degrees there, Port Alexander and Sitka, and eventually into the upper 30s there towards Skagway. Lower 40s, southwest interior, Kodiak Island, with Copper River Base and Gulkana holding about 9 degrees, but you can see a pretty good continuing warming trend here over south central Alaska, mid to upper 30s for the highs. And at 42 there, actually at Sparavon, higher elevation with the southeast winds, staying a little below zero here over the eastern interior, near zero along the Arctic coast. And moving on to Sunday morning, 10 to 15 below eastern interior and 0 to 10 below for the Arctic coast. Lows near 40 for northeast Bristol Bay here, or actually upper 30s there, and upper 40s along the outer coastline of the Panhandle, otherwise mostly in the lower 40s. With the interior here, north of the Alaska Range, temperatures will be in the single numbers, but 20s to mid 30s for south central Alaska and those areas, and lower 30s over the Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Okay, moving into the flying weather section now. Increasing with all the moisture coming up, those strong southerly winds at the surface and the loft, a lot of moisture will be increasing the IFR here. North Gulf Coast, western Prince William Sound, down the Kenai Peninsula there. Also up along and on the east side and eventually the south side of the central Alaska Range, more so though for the eastern slopes of the western range. And swath of IFR out here, just catching the west side of Nunivak Island, on down to the Pribilofs, back up across St. Lawrence Island, mostly to the south though, and some IFR up there from the southern Chukchi Sea in toward Kotzebue Sound and the Selawik Valley. It looks like coming back in around to the Nulato Hills and eastern Norton Sound. IFR socked in across all of the southeast coast. And then for tomorrow afternoon, that retreats back a little bit here, well, actually quite a bit in some areas, leaving marginal VFR behind. Really not much of a change, just a gradual increase in the lower conditions here on the southern slopes of the central Alaska Range late in the afternoon, probably holding off till evening. IFR still here off the southwest coast, but now east of the Pribilofs, on down to the north side of the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians. VFR though, Kuskokwim Valley right up into the central interior, North Slope, Arctic Coast, Brooks Range looking really good tomorrow afternoon. Marginal VFR out over the remainder of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And for Sunday morning, good VFR holding here, especially north of the Alaska Range into the southwest, just about all the way to the southwest coast, up to the Arctic, and IFR along the North Gulf Coast here, the Coast Range, in across mainly western Prince William Sound, on down Kenai Peninsula, and again the upslope areas of the western Alaska Range, and this area zone here holding offshore, although an extension up into the southwest hills there and mountains, on down to the Alaska Peninsula, marginal VFR, Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And then for Sunday afternoon, VFR now over the southern southeast coast, marginal to the north, and then up toward northern Lynn Canal Glacier Bay toward the passes. IFR holding here, northeastern North Gulf Coast, and a little less now there in western Prince William Sound, but marginal here for south central Alaska. Excuse me, on up in the Copper River Basin. Some of that spilling on the other side of the mountains there, though that good southerly wind flow, a lot of moisture coming up, so you could see some marginal VFR showing up there over the 40-mile country. And we still have this area of IFR off the southwest coast here, St. Lawrence Island. Actually makes a little bit of a jog eastward there in toward the Delta coast, and marginal VFR everywhere else in the Aleutians and the Bering. Anatuvik VFR, same forecast for Adigan. VFR, good conditions there for Adigan Pass. Now, Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR, eastern approaches, otherwise marginal, and rainy, just call it marginal VFR with the lowest conditions in the eastern entrance, possibly VFR there for the west side, and windy, marginal VFR, definitely VFR there out of that north entrance into the Tanana Valley, and Isabel, same thing, marginal possibly on the south entrance, coming up late tomorrow afternoon, and more likely the overnight tomorrow night and early Sunday. And then from Antasta, looks like VFR for the entire day tomorrow. And for Tanita, VFR, but late in the afternoon, possibly going marginal here, or trending that way on the eastern entrance. And again, overnight tomorrow night and into Sunday, probably definitely see some marginal VFR swinging into the area there. And for Portage, IFR, easiest one of the bunch. And for Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR becoming IFR definitely by the afternoon. Freezing levels 2,000 feet, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast, much warmer air now coming up, 8,000 feet reappearing here just south of the Queen Charlotte Islands at the surface up to St. Matthew Island. And icing, areas of occasional widespread moderate along the North Gulf Coast there, and definitely, especially into the Panhandle. Jet stream, strong southerly flow, 160 knots, and it kind of splits right through here, going over the top of the ridge, bringing all that moisture northward. Really strong winds both at 9 and 3,000 feet here. You can see up to 90 knots coming across Kachemak Bay, and that strong wind pattern also at 3,000 feet, 70 to 80 knots here, with 30 to 40 knot winds over the interior. South or northeast 35, lighter winds, more north-northwest out here over the Aleutians, and then 60 to 55 knot winds into the Panhandle. Taking a look at the turbulence, with those strong winds, we've got widespread, considerable moderate turbulence in the forecast here, much of the central interior, and some of these areas, especially Kenai Peninsula into the Aleutian range there, could be severe for smaller aircraft.
By the year 2010, the FAA, or Federal Aviation Administration, estimates approximately 1 billion passengers will travel on board commercial planes. As air travel increases, pilots are faced with more congestion on the ground and in the air.
And while pilots are ultimately in control of their own aircraft, it is the air traffic controllers who are directing them the moment the plane leaves the gate, keeping in constant communication as the plane travels en route.
Our own Johnny Alonso finds out how this complex system keeps our skies organized and our planes on schedule.
During peak air travel times in the United States, there are about 5,000 airplanes in the sky every hour, which is about 50,000 aircraft operating in our skies every day. From the time the plane pushes back from the gate until it arrives at the gate of its final destination, it is being handled by air traffic controllers. These controllers must coordinate the movements of thousands of aircraft, keep them at safe distances from each other, and direct them during takeoff and landing from airports. Air traffic controllers are also responsible for directing aircraft around bad weather and ensuring that traffic flows with minimal delay for both commercial and private aircraft. I spoke with Gary Laurel from NASA Langley to find out how it works.
An air traffic controller is primarily tasked with separating airplanes. However, they do provide other services such as traffic advisories, weather information, and other status types of information for the National Airspace System.
What are some of the tools used by air traffic controllers?
The primary tool used by controllers for separation services is called radar, which stands for radio detection and ranging. And essentially what happens is from an antenna, a radio beam is transmitted, it bounces off the aircraft and is returned to the radar antenna. And there's a presentation on the radar display of which your position is based on that return. You can see behind us there's a display which is part of the radar system that controllers use, and your position as well as the position of other aircraft in the system will be presented on display and give the information the controller needs to provide air traffic services to you.
So, does one controller handle my plane while it's in the air?
There are a number of controllers that will handle your flight as you move throughout the system. Once you depart, your flight will be handed off to yet another controller, and that process continues throughout the duration of your flight. The primary delineation of what a controller is responsible for in a radar environment is called a sector. So as a controller works you through his or her sector, you'll be transferred to another sector where another controller will work you.
All right, so Gary, wait, walk me through this. What happens from departure to arrival, from gate to gate?
Assuming there aren't any delays, you'll taxi out to your departure runway, and there's a controller that issues taxi instructions and deconflicts you from other airplanes on the ground. There's a controller that will issue a takeoff clearance for you, and yet another controller that will work you as you're climbing to your cruise altitude. As a matter of fact, several controllers. As airplanes move from one sector to the next, there's a transfer of what we call control, and there's a transfer of communications, so that you'll be in communications with each controller along the way. And this process continues all the way to your destination airport, and you may talk to 10 or 15 different controllers en route to your destination. Prior to descending into the terminal area at your destination airport, there are several controllers involved in sequencing inbound to that airport and assigning the arrival runway. Once you get there, you'll land, you'll taxi clear the runway, and you'll be issued taxi instructions. They'll take you right to your gate, but that's basically how the process works.
Wow. And I thought that the pilot was in control of the whole flight.
Well, the pod is ultimately responsible for the safe operation of his or her airplane. Yeah. However, they are required to adhere to air traffic control instructions. Just like when you're driving your car, there are certain signs along the way that basically tell you what you're required to do. As you get to a busy intersection, you may have to slow the car down. If there's a red light, you have to stop because you're trying to accommodate other cars, because you're not the only car out there. And that's pretty much the way your air traffic control system works. Sure. There are control instructions that are issued because you're not the only airplane out there.
You get tickets?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. So in the future, will air traffic control be much different than it is today?
I think so. We're of course not building more airports. We're not building many more runways either, so we have to optimize the use of the facilities that we currently have. And to that end, NASA is looking at cutting-edge concepts and technologies to make better utilization of those facilities, both in terms of capacity, that is to say the number of airplanes you can get in and out of an airport at a given time, and safety as well. And these are just some of the concepts that have been explored by NASA and continue to be explored.
Really? I got a question. How do you change the channel on this? I mean, do you have cable on this thing?
That's all for this edition of Destination Tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. I'm Steele McGonigal.
And I'm Kara O'Brien. For all of us here at NASA, we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Not a whole lot of difference from what it was yesterday. Easterly winds continue, and that's slowly allowing some westward progression of the ice here along the west coast on up toward the Bering Strait. And it looks like late Sunday and into the first of next week, those winds will go from east to southeast and eventually to southerly. So that'll actually start to erode it back a little bit. Moving on to the coastal forecast here, good gales coming in to the picture late tonight and for tomorrow here for the Panhandle, 40 to 45 knots, seas building to 20 feet, and small craft advisories over the central and southern inside waters, southeast 25, north 20 for northern Lynn Canal. Outlook for Sunday, 40 knots southeast, all along the coastline, pretty uniform wind direction and speed, and the wave heights from 21 feet in the north to 25 feet south. And then we got southeast 30, gust 40 for Clarence Strait, gust 40 knots also for Stevens Passage out of the southeast. Southerlies now back into northern Lynn Canal, 25 knots. Prince William Sound, east winds tomorrow, 45 knots, seas up to 10 feet. Got good storms, 55 to 60 knots here for the North Gulf Coast areas out of the east, seas building 30 to 32 feet. And hurricane force wind warning out for the Barren Islands east, 65 knots, 30-foot seas. Also a hurricane force wind warning out for Kachemak Bay with 65-knot winds. 55 knots for southern Cook Inlet south of Fort Orleans. A good storm warning there, and high-end gales for northern Cook Inlet north, 45 knots with 15-foot seas. And those come down considerably on Sunday and even drop below gale force here south of the Fort Orleans. 40 knotters out of the southeast, Kachemak Bay, gales for the Barrens coming down to 30 knots here for the North Gulf Coast, down to 20 for Prince William Sound. And for Kodiak, we've got 50 to 60 knot winds in the forecast there. Out of the east and northeast, Shelikof Strait northeast, seas 28 feet here on the east side, 40 knots, Sitka to Castle Cape, and then northeast 30 down to Cape Sarachev. Minimum gales here for the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, and northeast 45 there for Bristol Bay. Those become southeast at 30 on Sunday, and we've got southeast winds 25 for the Alaska Peninsula, except Pacific side southwest 30, pick up the southerlies at 35, and we got minimum gales out for the waters around Kodiak Island with seas up to 20 feet. And then for the western Aleutians, real light out there, 15 to 20 knots out of the north, and small craft advisories is central Aleutians, northerlies 25 to 30 for the Fox Islands, with seas running anywhere from 8 to 13 feet. Taking a look at Sunday, westerlies 25 knots, seas 10 to 11, maybe 12 feet here on the Pacific side. A little stronger in the winds, Adak and Atka, northwest or west-northwest at 30, and then back down to 25 knots from the northwest on out to Attu Island. And for the southwest coast, north of Nunivak Island, 20 knotters out of the northeast, 40 knots here south of Nunivak Island, diminishing and becoming northerly at 25 for the Pribilofs, northeast 25 for St. Matthew Island with 10-foot seas, and 25-knot winds, St. Lawrence Island to the Bering Strait with seas running about 8 feet in the open water areas. Then those become easterly at 30 knots on Sunday, drop back to 25 there north of Nunivak Island, southeast 30 south of Nunivak Island, northwest 20 for the Pribilofs, north 30, 12-foot seas for St. Matthew Island. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, we've got a gale out east 35 knots and pretty brisk even along the entire stretch of the coastline there. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast 30 knots coming down to 25 for the central coast. East 20 there on the west side, becoming northeast at 20 south of Cape Thompson to the Bering Strait, east 25 knots. And then for Sunday, east 25 continue, and we're looking at 20-knot winds here coming down to 20 knots out of the east. Now up to 40 knots there as you head over toward demarcation point in that far eastern zone. Otherwise, east 25 here for the a little farther to the west. And moving ahead to, again, tonight's forecast recap, just fair and dry, variable amounts of mid and high clouds, especially through this portion of the state. Wind advisory continues for the Kobuk Valley, Galena, and those areas tonight, west central interior, and a wind advisory out for the eastern Brooks Range there. And a winter storm warning continues tonight from the northern panhandle. 4 to 9 inches of snow, trending toward rain, much warmer air coming up, as we'll see a big surge of moisture and warming temperatures with that next system, surge coming northward. Really strong winds across southern Alaska tomorrow, and a little chillier and showery for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And then for Sunday, rain heavy at times, especially around Yakutat. Drying out, temperatures near 50 over the southern panhandle for Sunday afternoon. basically dry over the interior, a little breezy out here, but milder with rain and snow along the coastline, and showers continue out over the Aleutians. Thank you for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.